Despite that 15 years have already passed from the 11 September attacks of the United States of America, in which planes crashed to the Twin Towers, we can still remember what impact those attacks had on that society. But what we could not imagine is how those attacks could determine the way in which nations will plan their international foreign policies in order to preserve their security. So during this speech, I am going to talk about the aspect that main concern us through the last century, counterterrorism. This counterterrorism means a new security dilemma, and this new security dilemma means challenging the freedom dilemma. Since the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, as I said, the international foreign policy, and concretely the American foreign policy, has focused on the war on terror. This emphasis on the threat of terrorism is extremely valuable for analytical purposes, as it draws attention to key aspects of international security. So we can find two different problems deriving from this situation. Firstly is to assess the appropriate or most effective role of states and great powers in reacting to and dealing with terrorism and other forms of violence. The second one arises from the sentiment of international security and how to deal with it without imposing this security dilemma over the freedom dilemma. So, during the following minutes, I will try to explain how to fight against global terror and how this fight has questioned the traditional security dilemma. Moreover, I will try to deal with how this intense fight against terrorism is interfering in one of our basic human rights, freedom. So the question to be treated from now on is the dilemma between security and freedom. At first glance, it may seem that being secure means giving up liberty, because we believe that this will protect our safety. When talking about the war on terrorism, safety can be a barrier to liberty, but freedom is unthinkable without security. If I am not safe, I don't feel free. Up until the moment, the general expectation was, in the face of security versus freedom dilemma, the human rights movement supporters will opt for freedom. Unfortunately, the terrorist target has changed over the last years, moving from governments, nations, even politicians, military forces, to what's most worrying to civilians, challenging even more the international security and making it harder to deal with it. This new brand of terrorism has consequently given rise to a new brand of counter-terrorism measures. Once said this, it is also essential that neither terrorism or human rights are new phenomena. What is important to recognize is that 11S attacks has created new challenges, new threats, and new henses for human rights, such as freedom. The crucial concern on this century is how to effectively respond to the threat of terrorism without abandoning the fundamental human rights principles that are the main pillars of democratic societies. So, as new sorts of terrorism have arisen, it is also essential to use new tools to fight it, and intelligence plays a primary role. But it is also receiving some critical aspects. The use of information is crucial to prevent new attacks, but the way to obtain this information is put in stake, which is normally acquired through the invasion of private lives. So, how far can we go in the use and achievement of such an information? Well, according to the 4th article of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, The right of freedom, at some levels, may be justifiably infringed by states in times of public emergency. And according to European and worldwide situation in regards to terrorism, it could be said that we are at risk. So, this feeling of international security has led us to a situation in which our freedom, as I just said, can be put at risk. As I just said, intelligence is the best way of coping terrorism, but the way in which this intelligence is played, as I said, is quite controversial. A clear example of this environment of fear is the creation of the Patriot Act in the USA after 2001 attacks. This act enables the state to act with a wider range to control different areas to prevent terrorism. But this act has been strongly critiqued by several organisms and organizations, especially those ones defending human rights, due to the restriction of liberty and the constitutional guarantees that has meant for citizens. One of the most used tools to gather information is by listening phone conversations and recording them, which we could question until which point is vulnerating our liberty to talk with privacy. So until which point this feeling of being secure is not transforming to paranoia? Well, I would say that there is a very fine line in between security and paranoia. So that is why it is essential for most governments to seek a balance between these two. We can also observe that how this paranoia is leading society to racism, in which other races, concretely nowadays the Muslim one, are seen as a threat for their national security. The most clear and recent example of this turning society is the late victory of Donald Trump in the US elections for presidency. He won the elections with a clear racist discourse and with a discourse defending the strong armament, the rearming of the USA, and the use of all military means to fight against terror. We can also see these effects in the European nations, with the boom of the extreme national right-wing parties in different countries. It is clear that counterterrorism is a main worrying issue in our lives, and it should be until things show no improvement. I think most people believe, and I certainly do, that you can have a very high level of protection of civil liberties and a very high level of national security. But definitely, the improvement of laws that enable the vulneration or inclusion in individual private lives cannot be the path to follow. We must then appeal to governments to refuse this sentiment of paranoia which is embracing us, and seek balance not just only between security and freedom, but between security, freedom, and courage. Thank you very much.